Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. If others come and join us, great, more the merrier, but we are grateful to have those who were able to respond at this time. But first of all, I want to say thank you to the historic Fountain Street Church for being our host here this afternoon for this press conference of clergy and faith leaders from Western Michigan who have signed their names to stand publicly against discrimination against the LGBT community. My name is Reverend Dr. Roland Stringfellow. I'm the board president of Inclusive Justice, which is a statewide coalition of congregations and faith leaders who stand in solidarity and allyship with the LGBTQ community. And again, we're just so very grateful to have my colleagues who are standing here behind me, who you'll hear from as well. So again, this is an exciting day because we are launching a statewide campaign here in Grand Rapids that will begin in Western Michigan and spread from here. We have close to 60 signers, and that number is growing. In fact, it has grown today. And we have individuals who are standing bold to say that our community and those who we serve will not discriminate, and we stand against any legislation that would do so as well. This campaign, if you will, actually started a year and a half ago where we started to reach out to congressional leaders throughout the state of Michigan, not just here in Western Michigan, but throughout the state as well, to speak to them both publicly and behind closed doors. The reason why it is so very important to have these protections, not only here in the state, but also federally as well. On the occasion of National Religious Liberty Day, which occurred just a few days ago, we are gathered here today to lend our voices to not only that's happening here in Michigan, but throughout the United States, of faith leaders who are taking the lead on this issue for equality and justice for all who live in our communities, but particularly those who are tend to be more marginalized than others, those of the LGBT community. So without further ado, I'm going to invite up my colleagues who you'll hear from, and they will also share their reason for signing on to this letter. So first I would like to have Dr. Fred Wooten to come up, the senior pastor here at Fountain Street.
Were it not for Greg, I would not be here today. He was my best friend and fellow Boy Scout 50-some years ago, and one afternoon, he wanted to kiss me. I did not, and how hurt he was, I do not know, but we remained friends until his family moved to California a year later. I'm thankful because in that one moment, I realized he was gay, I was not, and that we were still friends. Homophobia did not infect me because Greg was brave that day. Long before Harvey Milk said that coming out was the way out, Greg did it, and just as Harvey predicted, it saved me from the disease of homophobia. Because of Greg, I was brave enough to have lunch years later with Christine Jorgensen when she came to campus. And 5 years later, I've celebrated my first communion service as a celebrant with Sandy, a lesbian student at my seminary. And because of all of them and more, Scott, Sarah, D.W., Woody, Ginny, just to name a few, I'm a better spiritual person. And that's why I'm proud to be part of the host event this day, to support it, because not only is it right, my spiritual health has been blessed by those who have bravely included me in their lives, and that means my moral health depends on including them in mine. Fortunately, I serve and have served congregations that think as I have. To my clergy colleagues elsewhere in traditions that cannot yet accept the spiritual equality and dignity of LGBTQ folk, I want you to consider the bravery that Greg showed me and the courage that they have had in including me in their lives. Dare to listen to them and learn from our LGBTQ plus family, because they are in your family, and your neighbors because they are your neighbors. Remember that the scripture says that those who welcome strangers often entertain angels unaware. It is about time that those who are still struggling realize that there is nothing to lose and everything to gain. Behind me, you can see a banner made of many colors, and you think, well, that's not quite the rainbow, is it? And it is not. This enormous banner is one we're building all year long. Well, why not unfurl it all at once? Well, because inclusive justice is not a vote, but a journey. Oh, sure, we could fly a flag any day we want, but would that change us in any meaningful way? No, we have to go on the journey. And in my 15 years here at South Fountain Street Church, we have gone from familiar passive acceptance that means it's okay for you to be here as long as we don't notice you being gay, to conscious welcome. We really like seeing you with us, to positive affirmation. You have gifts we need to grow. But even that is not the end. There is more to justice than this, and not until every color of the human rainbow is present equally can we claim to be done, and that is still, sadly, a long way off. We here in this church and we here in this room are committed to building a human rainbow, to the long walk and the long work that bends the moral arc of the universe toward justice. And on this day after Martin Luther King Day, we remember that not until all are equal are any of us truly equal, and not until all injustice has been defeated can we claim that justice has been done. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Wooden. At this time, I would like to invite up Reverend Rachel Barr, the pastor of the Plymouth Church, United Church of Christ.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Rachel Barr, and I am the pastor at Plymouth United Church of Christ. And it is such a pleasure to be here today. Just about 18 months ago, I was called as pastor of Plymouth United Church of Christ, and I knew it was the community of faith for me. It was a welcoming and inclusive home that I knew that my wife, Gabrielle, and our children, Clementine and Eleonora, could find a home in. I understand the importance of finding welcome and inclusion because I've not always had these protections in my former churches. Because I identify as queer and genderqueer, my wife identifies as transgender, it's been an uneasy journey for us to find acceptance and opportunities that so many just take for granted. We've been forced to make many transitions professionally and state to state to reach this place in Grand Rapids. But today, I proudly pastor Plymouth United Church of Christ that long ago, in 1998, took a strong and a bold stand saying that LGBTQ people were created in the image of God, that they are essential to being a part of the kingdom of God, and we make the church better. That's why for people, especially LGBT folks, living out who we are is a holy and a sacred calling. It is being authentically ourselves, our blessedness, our belovedness, that when we fully live into who we are, living as liberated people, others cannot help but being drawn to us because of who we are. That God sees us and loves us, and folks are drawn to that. But there are privileges that I hold that so many do not have. That so many LGBTQ folks in the community, in our state, do not. I'm a pastor for everyone, but I have many queer people and people of color and folks with disabilities, folks who face real and painful harms and discrimination on a daily basis. And it is them that I listen to, and it's their struggle that I bring here today. I am awed by their ability to persevere and struggle through the day-to-day challenges of living boldly as they are. I'm reminded of a trans woman a number of years ago who in her transition recognized that she was likely never going to have consistent, livable wages ever again. And so she went into business for herself. And that is the queer spirit. That she knew that she could find a way forward, finding a way through what seemed like impossible circumstances. And I think of all the young people who I've had the privilege to pastor, especially LGBTQ young people who have lived with such courage, who have faced rejection by the people who love them the most. These are the young people who often call for us to make appropriate restrooms in their schools and in public places, that we honor their pronouns of choice. These are the young people for which I wear this stole that was given to me in 2013 at General Synod of the United Church of Christ, where I pledged as a clergy person to do everything in my ability to work for their protections so that they could live a hopeful future. And this is what we are about here today. It is these young people that we stand for in solidarity with, that we are helping to bring about a future that they can envision, where they have a living wage, where they can be free from all discrimination, that they can envision a place and a home and a community where they can have a family that is free of harm and discrimination. But right now, I'm hearing from them, and their words is that we are failing them, that our LGBTQ youth are facing dire consequences, that they are having to remain closeted for fear of being sent to camps. And so I recognize that there is so much work for us to do. There are so many hearts and minds for us to open. And this challenge seems so large and so daunting for any one person. But I remember that even David didn't defeat the Goliath on his own, that he stood with an army behind him. And knowing that God gave him courage, that God was with him. And so as faith leaders, we sign this pledge form as just a portion of those committed to fighting for the dignity and the respect for all LGBTQ folks in the community. And we stand on the side of love, and we stand knowing that God is with us and we will win. Amen.
At this time, I'd like to invite up Reverend Chris Rowe, who's also a minister for spiritual life and learning here at Fountain Street Church.
Good afternoon. I am the Reverend Christopher Rowe, and I'm an ordained minister in the American Baptist Churches. I'm here today both as a faith leader who believes in the dignity and the fullness of life and worth for every person, and also as someone who has personally recognized and experienced the value of these non-discrimination protections for all people that we're talking about today. My husband and I are those young people that left Michigan because we didn't see a future for ourselves here, and eventually moved back in 2016. Currently, I am the Minister for Spiritual Life and Learning here at Fountain Street Church, which means I get to oversee the educational and spiritual programs that happen on a weekly basis, both within and outside of these walls. And I love my work with the youngest among us. They're a lens into the culture and a lens into the concerns of today. When I was in undergraduate school, I served a church in the area because I went to school here. And I was offered a position, but I never really shared that I was gay to them. One day it casually came up in conversation, and it seemed like not a big deal to me in the moment, so I shared it with some colleagues and my supervisor. It would not have been a big deal for any non-queer folk. A little while later that night, I got an email from my supervisor letting me know that she had found a replacement for me, because she was aware that I no longer wanted to serve the church. It was only a few years later that I was doing my student teaching through a local university when I was placed in a classroom within the metropolitan area of Grand Rapids. 2 days into my teaching assignment, the university called me and told me not to come back to that school. They were going to secure a new classroom in a new district with a new cooperating teacher for me. It was over a year later before my site supervisor from the university reached out to me and took me to dinner and said, "I never wanted you to know this, but when I went to visit the classroom we placed you in, the teacher wanted me to know she was concerned that you were gay. She wanted to save me from the embarrassment and the pain of that experience and waited until that moment to share it with me." Now, I'm fortunate that I was young at the time and that it wasn't a devastating loss for me. I wasn't trying to support a family or a household, and I had the agency to decide that Michigan was not a welcoming and hospitable place for me or my husband. But we know that so many people in our community are not as fortunate. There are LGBTQ members in our very midst and in all of our congregations who have felt forced to hide their identity. I've heard their stories countless times. They are parents in my program, they are parishioners, they are people that we connect with on a daily basis. They feel that they need to keep a life of secrecy so that they can protect their families and support their households. The fact is, without explicit protections, LGBTQ people in Michigan remain vulnerable, and we need that to change. As someone who works directly with young people, I am particularly concerned about the effects of feeling unwelcomed and feeling unprotected on LGBTQ youth. This is why I was proud to join the more than 50 faith leaders who support non-discrimination protections for LGBTQ people and stand with my colleagues today. By signing on to this letter and speaking out with our colleagues, we are showing that there is a chorus of voices that demand that every person and every youth deserves safe and welcoming community. I am so fortunate and grateful that I am in a congregation and in a place in my community where I feel the support and the protections of a welcoming community, and we need that to be extended to all Michiganders and ensure that our LGBTQ young people will be able to see the same future for themselves, free of non-discrimination and full of opportunity in the communities in the state that they want to call home. Thank you.
I would also like to invite up Reverend Bruce Roller, who is a UCC pastor and with the United Church Outreach Ministry.
That is so hard to say, isn't it? Good afternoon, I'm Bruce Roller. After pastoring for 30 years, I've spent the last 20 years ministering within the United Church of Christ, and am currently Executive Director of United Church Outreach Ministry. I came to Grand Rapids in 1987 to serve a congregation of the Universal Fellowship of Metropolitan Community Churches. And it's here in Grand Rapids that I met my husband, Philip Pletcher, and West Michigan is home to our children and our grandchildren. When I first came to Grand Rapids 30 years ago, seeing a member of clergy or any other person of faith speak up in support of LGBTQ equality was a rarity. I was one of the very few privileged gay ministers who could come out about my sexual orientation. And I felt called to speak out and to be open. Now, a few things that are worthwhile are easy. I received harassment and death threats and nasty letters and phone calls. I was attacked in the press by other faith leaders. But I knew this was too important to let slide. I felt very proud and feel very proud that I was part of a group of other advocates who came together to create the Lesbian and Gay Network of West Michigan. Those few of us enlisted our friends and acquaintances and allies and organized as a community. In 1987, we held the first Pride celebration on Calder Plaza, and I recall that the people literally came with hats and sacks to hide their faces from the media and from their families. It's a far cry from our current Pride celebration with 10,000 people of all stripes and persuasions gathered together, publicly sharing their stories. For the first celebrations, I invited all the clergy in town to join us on stage. And when a handful of clergy, about 5, showed, that was such a powerful moment for the people that were gathered in that first celebration. And now today, I look at this list of 50 and more faith leaders, and it shows just how far we've come. And I'm proud and blessed to have been a part of that progress. But our work is not nearly done. As executive director of United Church Outreach Ministry, I know all too well that when someone loses their job or a place to live, it can be devastating. Our organization was incorporated as a nonprofit ministry when United Churches of Christ came together to support social services, including access to healthy food and support of children's education. Now, financial literacy and workforce development options open new doors to economic stability, and we manage one of the largest food pantries in West Michigan. We're open to people of all backgrounds. Leading this organization, I can see how the lack of protections makes the LGBT community vulnerable. I know what it feels like personally to be denied housing because I was gay. I know individuals who have not found secure employment and have been turned away by others because of who they are and who they love, and that needs to change. And to those who claim that equality for the LGBT community infringes on their religious freedom, I want to say that as a minister, I also believe the freedom of religion is critically important. And I'm glad it's already firmly protected by the First Amendment. But that freedom doesn't give any of us the right to discriminate against or mistreat another person. Instead, our faith calls us to respect all people and to allow everyone the dignity to which they're entitled. We've been on a journey, all of us. And that journey and those hours and hours of organizing, praying, and sharing our stories have been a positive thing for our community. It's made us stronger, more accepting, and more inclusive. But we still have a long way to go. Liberty and justice for all means including everyone. And until we provide basic non-discrimination protections, we continue to fall short. I'm proud to stand with my fellow faith leaders who have been and will continue to be a voice for positive change and for the worth and dignity of all God's children.
I want to say thank you to all of our colleagues, all of my colleagues who have come out today. And this is not about declaring a Bible battle with religious conservatives or those who may disagree with our particular stance. But the main message that we want to send and to share today as a result of coming together is to say we need to indeed respect the common humanity of all who are in our communities. If we can do that, then we can definitely turn the tide against a lot of the discrimination and outcasting that takes place. I'd like to now open it up for any questions or reflections from those who are from the media who are here. With that, we would like to then invite up those who are gathered behind me to add their names to the pledge. Many of them, as I mentioned, have already done that, and at that we will be concluded. Thank you so much for coming, and if you have any other questions or follow-up, we would be happy to, I'm sure, to exchange cards. So thank you.